What's going on, everybody? Weather fans, thank you for returning. Taking a look at the weather for today and taking a look at the forecast for the next couple of days here, going through the nation right now. Right today, we got that marginal risk that's for the portion of northern Texas into Oklahoma here. Relatively low tornado risk though. For severe weather, going to have some heavy rainfall, and there is definitely some wind threats as well as that. A little bit of hail threat that might be possible through there. Getting a little bit of that as that trough kind of goes through, and you got that upper level, excuse me, that upper level air that's traveling across there in that trough. So that's going to cause a little bit of those windage issues and some of that the very heavy rainfall that's going to be attributed with that as well. Some possible hail threats, but through and through, I mean, the tornado threat kind of looks pretty stable at this point. It doesn't look really that bad right now. It's not as impressive as I would have noticed. You know what I mean? Or it doesn't really look that extreme right now as far as that's kind of going along. But anyways, looking at the GFS models here for the next next periods going through here, and I was doing a video on this as well. I did a video last night looking at some of the data that was going to happen as this system kind of moves through in the next week. Looking at the model forecast for this week, so now you can see that trough that's kind of building these storms that's here in the Central Plains and everything going through there, and you can see what's going on with some of these cells that are building up here, and that's where you're going to get a little bit of that convection potential and some of those storm potentials there as this trough kind of moves through, and heavier rainfall amounts, some possible wind threats, and some hail threat possibly. But you know what I mean? When I'm looking at the data for what it is, it doesn't look as bad as like the system that rolled through here just recently, not too long ago. So what are we looking at? 24th for today. Let's go through these models here and see if we can look at some attributed data with this as well, some analytical data. So now you start to see that system that's just kind of building there in the Central Plains, kind of going through there. Let's try to build it up a little bit. Let's look at some of that data and see what we can see here. So everything looks good here. Doesn't look really that impressive as far as extreme or severe weather is concerned. It's still relatively low on the end of it, here. And then as this kind of builds up, we're looking at mid-Texas. All right, so we got some marginal severe risk here. A little bit of disturbances here in some of the atmospherics. LCL isn't that bad. You know what I mean? A couple of disturbances and weaknesses in the cap here and in the wind field down towards the surface level as well. So that might have the potential later on to cause some wind problems and definitely maybe some hail problems. But then as we progress, it seems like these systems, they kind of go up and down in their stability. Where these systems, they burn off a lot of energy. See, the thing is with tornadoes and severe weather and these storms and everything is that a lot of times when you have these disturbances, these weaknesses in wind fields and the updraft, you know what I mean, and that's going to cause the storm to strengthen and then weaken and then strengthen and then weaken. And what happens is they burn off over and over and over again. They'll burn off their energy trying to reorganize, and then they'll have to build it back up again. And then by that time, it doesn't end up as bad as what we had anticipated at the first the first kind of sign of it, looking at it. So, and that's kind of what happens with these storms, and with these tornadic storms, and everybody's kind of looking at the rotation with them and the possibility for rotation in the updrafts and downdrafts and stuff. And like I said in the last video, it's that surface level downdraft that is going to be more prevalent. It's going to be that's what you want to pay attention to. Mid-level rotation doesn't exactly verbatim mean that you're going to have a tornado. It's not a sure thing that you're going to have a tornado because you have mid-level rotation. So when you start getting that low-level rotation, that surface rotation going on with that advection and that convection going on, that's an indication that you could have some tornadoes going on, in the near future. So still looking at that, still. You know what I mean? Marginal tornado risk in the southeast that's going on here. LCL height is really low on the surface here, so that's definitely favorable for some severe weather. And that is going into the 23rd. as we go through here through the southeast. Looking around the southern Louisiana area, this just means that the atmosphere is supportive for the possibility of tornadic storms. This does not mean that it's definitely going to happen. It means, too, you know what I mean, that you're going to have heavy rainfall, possibility of some hail. See, you know what I mean, the next frame in a different spot, LCL is pretty supportive. You know, so that just tells me that these storms are going to ramp up, they're going to die down, they're going to ramp up, and it just seems like they can't. They're not going to be able to fully organize the way that they need to for you know, specific indices of severe weather. They're not going to be able to stay stable for long enough to make a really severe event. Okay, so you know, it doesn't look as impressive as I would anticipate for a severe weather event. But there is no doubt that we're going to have some flooding possibilities. We're going to have some, you know, torrential downpours, possibly some hail, and definitely, I would say, some moderate wind threats that'll be attributed with these storms as they kind of move through. So you might want to be mindful of that. You know what I mean? Tie down your belongings and take care of that. And this system is progressing. Now, last night when I looked at the GFS models, this is through the 25th now. And last night with the GFS models, this storm is taking kind of a different track. Still that low, that's in that position here with this upper level low here, getting that that trough that's going to be kind of moving at high, that, you know, with that high level winds that it's going to be kind of blowing over there. But this is kind of taking a different track and a different outlook as far as the future forecast of this is kind of going along. So that, I mean, but that's the thing, you know what I mean? These systems change, and so the outlooks change. All right, this is kind of concerning here. This is on the day of 25th, 12Z. And so we're looking in the northern Mississippi range, somewhere around here. So we got some tornado threat that's going on here. Weakness in the wind field down here. Potential for some tornadoes in these areas. Up to, low end up to F3. So anywhere from F0 to F2 is probably likely. LCL height is supportive. Got some significant supercell development possibility, as well as some other weak things going on there as well with the shear and everything. Probably going to have some heat advection and some rise from the Gulf of Mexico that's going to support that as well. Going into the next frame, we're looking at 15Z on the 25th here. Let's take a look at northern Alabama and these dark green regions here where we're getting that building. So we're having that marginal tornado risk there. LCL is a little bit higher as far as lifting condensation, but it doesn't mean that it can't change. And then that low is centralized over the northern Mississippi portion going into Alabama. So we're going to look just ahead of that into Alabama, and this is what we got here. So this is pretty significant. Significant hail threat right there as well. Cap looks good. LCL height is mid-level. You know what I mean? Not really low, but not really high either. So it's supportive. So you do have some tornado risk here as well. Updraft is looking pretty stable. So this is a significant tornado risk going into the northern part of Alabama. Okay, so the possibility, and okay, so this yellow line here, I know it's going across the EF4, and I don't want everybody to get freaked out about that, but the EF4 is relatively on the low end, so EF4 plus, maybe a chance of it, but it's a low chance, you know, so we're kind of looking, I'm figuring anywhere EF0 to EF3, and even though these levels are high, and like I said, this is, you know, this is the, this is just the model, the way that it looks at, and the GFS, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. This just means that the atmospherics are supportive for these kinds of events. And that's all that we're looking at right now. Okay, so I don't want everybody to get freaked out about that or anything. So we looked right in the middle of the line, and you see these over here, and right in the middle of the line, it's not going to be as supportive because usually they form on the back of the line, and that's typically where they form. So yeah, marginal tornado risk. So if you look at the big orange areas here, you're not going to find it so much. But let's look right back here in that green section on the back of that squall there. Not too bad. You know, so that's the thing. In some spots, it's looking very supportive, which you're going to have like this. You know what I mean? You're going to have those spots of instability. LCL is a lot lower in this frame here. We got some significant readings on supercell development. Okay, some pretty significant stuff. 80. What does that say? 62% on TOR. 18% significant. So there is a chance that we could see some tornadic activity between Mississippi and Alabama going into, what is it, Thursday the 25th, I believe, as we're going in here. So, yeah, Thursday the 25th. So there is some significant risk that might be possible going into Mississippi and Alabama. And but it seems like pockets of instability, and that that moist advection. You're gonna have a lot of moisture here because you're gonna have torrential rainfall. That's gonna be, and as well as the moist and the heat, and kind of shift. Kind of washing in there from the Gulf of Mexico as long, as well as that upper level trough that's going to be coming through here as well, and that's going to cause some of that instability. You got the wind shear that's going to be supportive. The LCL lifting condensation is going to be relatively low to the surface, and that's going to be supportive of tornadoes as well. So you're going to notice different things on those days with the tornado parameter and the supercell composite being supportive. CAPE is generally probably going to be anywhere from 800 to 1500 joules per kilometer. So that's going to be supportive for these tornadoes, especially if we're getting these kinds of readings on GSF. That's kind of what I'm anticipating, is that it's going to be around those areas. But we're looking at, 21Z and the 25th. We're looking at mid Alabama, south of this line here, of storms. And in these darker green regions where you're probably most likely, you see that little dot right there. This is the area where you're going to have a little bit more of that widespread supercell development, where it's going to be isolated thunderstorms. And then with the wind shear and the upper level trough moving through, you're going to have the possibility of rotating thunderstorms in here, which could cause some of that mid-level and surface level rotation. And that is where you're getting that significant tornado threat that's in these areas. So a lot of areas, it looks like, in the southern portions of the southeast along the coast at this point that are pretty significant as far as supercell development. Like I said, doesn't necessarily mean and promise that you're going to have tornadoes in these regions. It just means that the atmospherics are going to be supportive of tornadic storm development, at the possibility of that anyway. So some severe potential could be evident, or it could, it could end up being better than what we anticipated. Now, where did I just go in this one? I think I'm going to, let's check right here on the Alabama line before it moves into Georgia. So we got significant tornado threat here, a little bit, 62% TOR. Look like supercell development is, pretty supportive. It's fair. LCL is relatively low to the surface, so that's going to be supportive as well. This is just a generalization here. Tornadoes, low end EF3, EF2 at EF1 range. So definitely looking like it's a possible thing as far as some severe weather moving through these regions. I'm going to go into the bottom edge of this line here. All right, so I would say that severe potential is possible through some of these areas where the atmospherics are going to be supportive of tornadic storms and rotating supercells. But even with that being said, some of the data doesn't look as promising or as impressive as I would have anticipated at first looking at it with some of these storms. So some weak supercell development that's here, 55% TOR, looking at possible tornadoes, usually EF2, EF1 range, low end EF3, but doesn't look as prevalent. Now we got this dark spot here on the 06Z, right on the mid-level range, Alabama-Georgia line. So pretty much the same readings all across, moving behind those storms as well. Now let me look ahead of the storms up here, going into the northern regions here. Maybe a little bit more accurate. I think it was a little far north on that. Yeah, so it seems like these are going to be kind of dissipating as we get up here. Yeah. So as it kind of pushes, same thing with the last system, as it pushes east, it seems like they lose a little bit of their organization, lose their strength a little bit as it kind of pushes east northeast. And then you got this remaining stuff that's kind of moving over. Same thing, you know what I mean? Tornado threats. So it's going to, it's just going to be the ability in the atmospheres for some rotating thunderstorm possibility, and it might have a lot to do with some of the mid-level rotation. I don't know. I wouldn't expect there's going to be too much surface rotation on it, but I could be wrong. You just gotta have to, we have to see how this storm kind of develops as it progresses across. But it doesn't look like it's as promising data. So I would put my money more on just heavy torrential rainfall, possibly some hail here and there. Definitely looking at the possibility for some high winds as well, blowing across the southeast and even the Midwest, going back into these models from earlier as we're kind of going through it. Let me look at the 24th. You know what I mean? Going back, excuse me. And I mean, some of these areas, you know what I mean, almost to, Illinois, Iowa kind of areas. Not too bad, but the way that low is kind of moving across, still might have some of the wind threats, even without any kind of tornadic or rotating supercell threats. And you're definitely going to have the rainfall amounts that's gonna it's gonna be there. So. All right. So it seems like this low, as it moves through, it kind of holds its cap. And that's what kind of it looks like, is as this blows through and it blows to the east. This low that's kind of going in here and this attributed low that's going to be moving into this region as it progresses further east, with that daytime heating. And, well, you got this cooler weather that's kind of going to be behind it, you know what I mean, behind these outflow boundary lines and these cool fronts that are going to be kind of pushing through. Behind this, getting some snow in these states that's over here in the northwest, all the way down to the west, even in Arizona, moving into New Mexico. It looks like going to have some snow threats there. So you got some cold weather that's going to be pushing behind this as well. So it looks like this storm, you know what I mean, this low that's over the Midwest is going to kind of develop these storms, and they hold out their organization and they hold their cap until they move further east. And then once they move further east, those caps start to break and rise, and then and that's when you start to get the thunderstorms and the possibility of the rotating thunderstorms, the heat advection from the Gulf of Mexico moving up, that moisture that's moving up. It's going to cause a little bit of that. It's going to cause a little bit of that rotation and that that building in those storms. Look at this, New Mexico getting that winter weather up there in the northeast corner of New Mexico, which is probably, I would assume, pretty rare. I mean, I've never lived in New Mexico, but I would assume that it's pretty rare up there for them to get that kind of winter weather, especially this late in the year, going into the springtime. When they usually get that warmer weather there. So there are some bizarre factors going on. So that's what it looks like to me. That low, as it moves through, it's just holding its cap until it gets further east, where it's a little bit wetter, a little bit more supportive in the atmosphere for those caps to break and those storms to develop. And then once they do develop, then you're going to get that organization with these storms where they're trying to, backbuild a little bit and they're trying to reorganize. And then as they reorganize, then you get these isolated cells that are going to kind of build up and everything. And then they get a little bit stronger. They start to join together and hang out in the clubhouse, so to speak. You know what I mean? They all kind of just join together and cling together. They're making a system, especially with this low that's moving up from the border of Mexico coming up here. You're getting a lot of that warmth that's being dumped in there as well, which is going to intensify these storms. That warm, moist advection that's kind of moving in there. It's going to help the development of that tornado parameter and that supercell composite, make the atmosphere a little bit, more unstable with that moisture. And that's what's causing those CAPE levels to increase and that storm to develop a little bit, and on the bordering edge of the significant or severe avenue as far as that. Now the only thing that really kind of concerns me here is how thin this line is, because that's going to be more potential for those high level winds. that very heavy rainfall, those rumbles of thunder and lightning. So you're going to have some organized thunderstorms that are going to be developing along this line as it kind of progresses. Going back a couple of frames, and you see how that's just kind of organizing as it moves east. It's just ramping up, and then it's starting to break apart and become more isolated, and then or more widespread, really. You know what I mean? So you're going to have that widespread potential for supercells that are going to be developing in here with the wind shear, depending on the way it's going to be. And yeah, so it looks like we got some moderate lapse rates that are going to be supportive in this as well. Kind of looking in, yeah, so looking in South Carolina here, LCL is pretty high for this. It's marginal tornado risk, but lifting condensation seems a little bit high for that. So I think that these are kind of situations where they're going to be rotating at mid-level. They're going to try to reorganize, and I think that they're going to burn off some of their energy and then back build up, and then it's just kind of ramp up and ramp down kind of situation because there's such a mixture here. So I would say that there is the potential for some severe or high-end storms that are going to be moving through this area, but I don't think that it's promising enough to see any kind of a widespread tornado outbreak or a lot of majorly dangerous things. But I just wanted to make this video so that we can take a look at what's going on. This is current water vapor right now, just kind of looking at the water vapor that's going through. You see, the kind of moisture that's going through as well, especially in these reds and everything, where you're seeing a little bit more of that heat that's going in there as well, so a lot of these, this is, let's look at the upper level vapor here, where you're getting some of those vortices that I was talking about in the last video. Is vertical vortice potential, and that's going to make it, that's also going to support the ability for some storms to develop, and some organized storms through the southeast as it kind of develops there. It's going to be supportive of some of the vertical shear vortices, and that's going to make the potential for rotating supercells and possibly some tornadoes too. But honestly, by looking at the GFS, if I had to, take a guess, and don't take my word for it, I could be wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm not a textbook, and I don't know everything, and I would not admit to know everything. But just based on the GFS model, the way I'm looking at it, I think that there is the possibility for some severe weather, but I don't see it being really, really extreme. I see that, what I mean, we might have some tornadoes, but I think, honestly, they're going to be generally on the low end. Now, Mississippi and Alabama, kind of going through there in those regions there, you guys in Mississippi and Alabama might have a little bit more potential for a little bit larger tornadoes or tornadic storms, or some prevalent severe weather capability in that area. Is it just because the atmospherics in going into Alabama and Mississippi, it looks a little bit more supportive for that, what I mean, for extreme thunderstorms and tornado development, supercell development, what I mean, with things like this and everything. But I honestly think that this is going to be relatively on the low end. I mean, LCL is, sitting almost at mid-level. It is low. It is low enough. So the atmosphere is supportive for some of those severe weather events that might go in there. Looking at southern Mississippi right now. And so this is PDS2GUR. So this is what I'm talking about. There's certain times and there's certain periods and pockets where the ability for tornado development is significant. So we have significant supercell development here, where it's pretty darn supportive for tornado development at this point. Supercell 16.4, so definitely going to have some supercell development going in here at this time as well. Looking at these high level abilities for the size of the tornadoes that are going to be coming in, and this is a generalization for what the atmosphere is going to be supportive of. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have EF4+. EF4+ is on the relatively low end, and it's just the effective layer that's going to be supportive of tornado development. PDS2R, for those who don't know, is particularly dangerous situation, tornado threat. So. And that was I'm just kind of looking at the wind levels here. That was in southern Mississippi. Let's go a little bit higher to northern Mississippi here, towards the mid here a little bit. Okay, so this is a little bit more significant here. LCL is lower, so you're definitely going to have supporting lift and condensation. Supercell development, definitely significant. Yeah, significant TOR. Effective layers looking pretty good for a tornado event. Looking around mid-Mississippi, moving into as it kind of goes through Alabama. This doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a very, very strong, significant tornado or long track tornado. It just means that this is going to be supportive of tornadoes generally within these ranges. So definitely getting, yeah, the updraft is looking significant as well. Classic supercell, you know, downdraft is significant as well. So this is a pretty favorable situation for tornado development, and this would be 18Z, the 25th. So the 25th is going to be a kind of question mark day as far as severe weather across the southeast is going to be concerned. Let me go back a frame and see how this just kind of builds up. Let's look at northeast Louisiana as it moves into, okay, so yeah, lifting condensation is very low, although this isn't as significant as organization and development for the storm as it moves into Mississippi. So let's go a little bit further south, look at mid-eastern, yeah, about the same thing. Okay, that covers Louisiana. Now let's look on the other side of it, northeast of the storms that are developing up into northwest Alabama. Yeah, so marginal tornado risk, but not as significant, not as impressive. Let's look at northern Mississippi, marginal severe. Okay, so at this point right now, it looks like this storm is just kind of, oh, well, there we go. We're smack dab in the middle of it. Where I went right here is pretty much on the eastern side of Mississippi, in the middle of all these cells. This is where you're going to get those little isolated cells that are going to be building in here and starting to kind of break up and organize here. And with that, accompanying wind shear, moisture lift, and heat mixed in with that as well, with that upper level trough, then you're going to get that storm development here. So from this point, this is it seems like where it's going to start to build up. Let me go back a frame. Zach, can you get that? All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop this video, and I will continue it in a little bit here. Got a phone call.